The morning was quiet and ordinary. Sunlight fell through kitchen windows across the world. Parents made breakfast. Children laughed and complained about school. No one knew that in a few hours everything would change forever. Dr. Park kissed her son on the forehead. Ha-jun was 6 years old, with messy hair and a smile that could light up any room. He held his small backpack with both hands and looked up at his mother. "Will you be home early today, Mama?" he asked. Smiled and touched his cheek. "I will try, my little one, be good at school." She watched him walk to the school bus. He turned and waved. She waved back. It was the last time she would see him for many weeks. Across the city, Admiral Ho was already in space, commanding a routine patrol mission. His twin daughters and Bora were 8 years old. That morning his wife had sent him a video of them eating breakfast, was stealing food from Bora's plate. Bora was pretending to be angry. Ho had watched the video 3 times, smiling each time. In a small orphanage near the mountains, Sargent sat with 15 children. He was a soldier, hard and from many battles. But here, with these children, he was gentle. He read them stories every morning before school. Today, he was reading about a brave knight who saved a kingdom. "And the knight never gave up," read aloud, because he knew that giving up was not an option. The children listened with wide eyes. They loved Sargent. He had no family of his own, so he had made them his family. The clock struck 7 in the morning. And then the world ended. It happened everywhere at once. A pale light, soft and cold, filled every room where children were present. It lasted only 3 seconds. When it faded, the children were gone. Was at her laboratory when her phone rang. It was her mother screaming words that made no sense. Ran to the window and looked outside. People were in the streets, falling to their knees, crying out names. She called Ha-jun's school. No one answered. She called again and again. Then she ran. When she reached the school, she found only chaos. Parents were everywhere, searching classrooms, calling out for their children. The rooms were empty. Backpacks lay on the floor. Shoes sat under desks. Food was still warm on lunch trays, but there were no children, not one. Walked through the hallways like a ghost. She found Ha-jun's classroom. His backpack was there, the one with the little dinosaur on it. She picked it up and held it to her chest. Her legs gave out and she fell to the floor. In space, Admiral received the emergency transmission. His second-in-command, a young officer named Lieutenant Ah, delivered the news. Her voice was shaking. "Sir, something has happened on Earth. All children under 12 years old have. They have disappeared, all of them, every single one." Ho stared at her. His brain refused to accept the words. "What do you mean, disappeared?" "Gone, sir, vanished. 2.3 billion children, including—" She could not finish. Ho's hand went to the screen on his desk. He pulled up the video of his daughters, stealing food. Bora pretending to be angry. His hands began to shake. His vision blurred with tears he refused to let fall. "Find them," he said. His voice was quiet, but something in it made everyone on the bridge go still. "Find whoever did this." At the orphanage, Sargent stood in an empty room. 15 beds, 15 small blankets, 15 sets of tiny shoes by the door, but no children. The book he had been reading lay open on the floor. The knight who never gave up stared at him from the page. Picked up the book slowly. He closed it and held it with both hands. Then he walked outside. He looked up at the sky, at the stars that humans had only recently learned to travel among. "I will find you," he whispered. "I promise." In the hours that followed, the world fell into madness. Hospitals filled with parents who could not stop screaming. Governments held emergency meetings that solved nothing. Religious leaders spoke of the end times. Scientists searched for explanations and found none. But Colonel Ah found something. She was an intelligence officer, trained to find signals in noise, patterns in chaos. While the world cried, she worked. She scanned every frequency, every transmission, every piece of data from the moment of the vanishing. And she found it. A signal, alien in origin. It had come from deep space exactly 3 seconds before the children disappeared. The signal matched the communication patterns of the Dominion, a powerful alien empire that controlled hundreds of star systems. Humans had met them once at a trade conference. They had looked at humanity the way humans might look at insects, unimportant, beneath notice. Ah brought her findings to Admiral. He read the report in silence. When he looked up, his eyes were different. The grief was still there, but now it was wrapped in something harder, something dangerous. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Yes, sir, they took our children." Far across the galaxy, on an warship, High Collector watched recordings of Earth. He saw the humans crying in the streets. He saw their military scrambling in confusion. He smiled with satisfaction. The harvest had been perfect. 2.3 billion young specimens, healthy and strong. They would serve the Dominion well. Some would become workers. Some would become subjects for experiments. They had done this many times to many species. Lesser races existed only to serve the greater ones. Scholar Lyra stood behind, watching the same recordings, but she was not smiling. She had studied humans for many years. She had read their history. She had seen what they did when pushed too far. "High Collector," she said carefully, "I must advise caution." Laughed, "Caution, against these primitives. They are barely spacefaring. They pose no threat." "You do not understand them," Lyra insisted. "Humans are not like other species. They bond with their offspring in ways we cannot comprehend. Taking their children is not like taking resources. You have attacked the very core of what they are." Waved his hand dismissively. "They will grieve, they will rage, and then they will accept. All species do." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, not this species. You have made a terrible mistake." Turned to look at her, still smiling. "You worry too much, Scholar. These humans are weak, emotional creatures. What can they possibly do?" Across the stars, Admiral Ho stood on the bridge of his ship. His face was calm. His voice was steady. And when he gave his next order, every officer on the bridge felt a cold fear run down their spine. "Set course for the Dominion. Send word to every human ship, military or civilian. Tell them what has happened. Tell them who is responsible." He paused and looked out at the stars. "And tell them we are going to bring our children home." Young Ha-Jun opened his eyes slowly. Everything was wrong. The air smelled strange. The light was too blue. The walls were made of a metal he had never seen before. He was lying on a cold floor with dozens of other children around him. A girl was holding his hand. She was older than him, maybe 8 years old. She had kind eyes and a brave face, even though he could see she was scared. "It is okay," she whispered. "My name is, what is your name?" "Ha-Jun," he said. His voice was very small. "Do not be afraid, Ha-Jun. Our parents will come for us." Beside, her twin sister Bora was looking around the cage with sharp eyes. She was studying the walls, the doors, the guards that walked past. She was her father's daughter, already thinking about escape. The guards were not human. They were tall creatures with skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and showed no emotion. When they looked at the children, they looked at them the way someone might look at boxes in a warehouse. Objects, things to be counted and sorted. One of the guards stopped in front of their cage. He was called Warden, and he was in charge of all the captured children. He looked at them and made notes on a device in his hand. 2.3 billion specimens, he said to another guard. "The largest harvest in Dominion history. The High Collector will be pleased." Back on Earth, 3 days had passed since the vanishing. And in those 3 days, something amazing had happened. Humanity had stopped fighting with itself. There were no more borders, no more countries, no more arguments about politics or money or power. Every human being on the planet understood the same truth at the same moment. Their children were gone, and nothing else mattered. Leaders who had been enemies for decades stood side by side. Armies that had pointed weapons at each other now worked together. Scientists shared every secret. Engineers worked day and night. Every factory on Earth began making weapons and ships. The United Earth Armada was born not through votes or treaties, but through the simple, terrible understanding that every adult shared. Their children needed them. Everything else was noise. Dr. Park had not slept in 3 days. She worked in her laboratory, studying every piece of information about that humanity had collected. Their biology, their technology, their weaknesses. She found what she was looking for on the 3rd night. They had a vulnerability in their nervous system. A specific frequency of chemical compound could shut down their bodies without killing them. They would fall unconscious, unable to move, but they would live. Could have made a poison that killed. Many people would have understood, but she did not want the dead. She wanted them to remember. She wanted them to live with the memory of what happened when they touched humanity's children. She worked faster. On his ship, Admiral Ho recorded a message. It was sent to every communication system in the known galaxy, translated into every alien language. He sat alone in his quarters. Behind him was a picture of his daughters. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something ancient and terrible. "To the Dominion," he began, "you have taken our children, all 2.3 billion of them. Perhaps you thought we would cry and do nothing. Perhaps you thought we would accept our loss like the other species you have conquered. You were wrong." He leaned forward slightly. "We are coming for you, every ship we have, every weapon we can build, every human being who can hold a gun or fly a shuttle. We are not coming to negotiate. We are not coming to make deals. We are coming to take back what is ours." His voice dropped lower. "And we will burn everything that stands in our way." Across the galaxy, other species received this message. The Velar Collective, an ancient empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds, reviewed the transmission in their war council. Their leaders were creatures of pure logic, beings who had calculated the fall of civilizations before humans had learned to make fire. They ran their calculations on the humans now. What they found made them go very quiet. "The humans are mobilizing their entire civilization," one leader reported. "Every military ship, every civilian vessel, every shuttle and transport. They are leaving their planet nearly undefended." "That is illogical," another leader said. "Leaving your undefended is strategic suicide." The first leader shook his head slowly. "They do not care about logic. They do not care about strategy. Their children were taken. They would burn their own world to get them back." The Velar Collective made a decision that day. They ordered all their forces to move away from human space, far away. They wanted no part of what was coming. In a hidden military base on Earth, Captain Li Jin assembled her team. She was called the Silent Wolf because she never spoke during missions and never failed to complete them. Her record was perfect. 23 impossible missions, 23 successes. This mission would be her 24th. Her team was made of the most dangerous soldiers Earth had ever produced, men and women who had trained their entire lives for combat. They looked at her with steady eyes, waiting for orders. "We are the tip of the spear," Jin said. Her voice was soft but carried absolute authority. "While the fleet fights the Navy, we will go to the planet where the children are held. We will find them. We will protect them until extraction arrives." One soldier raised his hand. "Rules of engagement." Jin's eyes were cold. "If they surrender, restrain them. If they resist, eliminate them. Our only priority is the children. Everything else is secondary." Sargent was on that team. He had requested the assignment personally. He could not stop thinking about the 15 children from his orphanage, their faces, their voices, the stories they loved to hear. He checked his weapons one more time. He was not a man who prayed, but that night he made a promise to whatever powers might be listening. "I will bring them home, all of them, or I will die trying." On the High Collector finally began to feel doubt. Reports were coming in from the edges of Dominion space. Human ships were appearing everywhere, not one or two, thousands. Overseer, commander of the fleet, delivered the latest report with a face that showed fear for the first time. They have 50,000 ships and counting, High Collector. More join them every hour. They are not stopping to rest. They are not stopping to resupply. They are coming straight for us. Frowned, that is impossible. They cannot sustain such a pace. They are not eating, High Collector. They are not sleeping. Our observers report that human crews work in shifts around the clock. Some have collapsed from exhaustion and been replaced immediately. Scholar Lyra stepped forward. I tried to warn you. Humans are driven by something we do not have. They call it love. When it comes to their children, this love makes them capable of anything. They will sacrifice everything. Themselves, their health, their lives, nothing else matters. Stared at the reports. For the first time, he began to understand the size of his mistake. In the holding facility, gathered the children around her. She was only 8 years old, but she was her father's daughter. She knew how to be strong when others were scared. Listen to me, she whispered. Our parents are coming, I know they are. We just have to be brave and wait for them. Can you do that? The children nodded. Some were crying softly. Others held hands with the children next to them. Ha-Jun looked up with trusting eyes. How do you know they will come? Smiled even though her own heart was breaking with fear. Because that is what parents do. They always come for their children, always. Far above them, the first human ships entered space. They did not slow down. They did not stop. They came like a wave of steel and fire, and they would not rest until every child was safe. The hunt had begun. The outpost was quiet. It floated in deep space, a military station with 500 soldiers and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. The commander was drinking a warm beverage when the alarm started. 11 minutes later, the outpost was silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence, the silence of defeat. Sergeant walked through the ruined hallways. Around him, soldiers lay unconscious or restrained. The human strike team had moved through the station like ghosts, appearing from shadows and disappearing just as quickly. Found the station commander hiding in a storage room. The alien was shaking badly. He had never seen anything like what had just happened. His 500 soldiers had been defeated by 30 humans in 11 minutes. Grabbed the commander by his collar and lifted him up. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed no mercy. Where are the children? The commander stuttered words in his alien language. Waited. He had learned patience over many years. He could wait as long as he needed to. I do not know, the commander finally said in broken human speech. They were taken to the central facility. Please, I only follow orders. Let him drop to the floor. Thank you for your cooperation. He turned and walked away. The commander would live. All the soldiers would live. The humans were not killing unless they had to, but they made sure every survivor understood the same message. Tell your leaders what happened. Tell them what is coming. Across the galaxy, the Council of Elder Races held an emergency meeting. 12 ancient civilizations sat together, representing trillions of beings across thousands of star systems. They had existed for millions of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They thought they had seen everything. They were wrong. The council leader, a being of pure energy called addressed the assembly. We have received reports of human activity throughout the sector. They have destroyed or captured 47 military installations in the past week. Their advance is relentless. An ambassador from the Dominion spoke up. Should we intervene? They are our allies. We could send forces to support them. A long silence followed. Then they displayed the combat recordings from the outposts. The council watched as 30 humans dismantled 500 trained soldiers in minutes. They watched as human pilots flew their ships into vessels in suicide attacks, destroying warships 50 times their size. They watched as wounded human soldiers continued fighting even as their bodies failed. When the recordings ended, no one spoke. Finally, an ancient being called the Memory Keeper broke the silence. I have studied 10,000 species across 1,000,000 years. I have never seen anything like this. These humans are not fighting for territory. They are not fighting for resources. They are fighting for their offspring. All species protect their young, the ambassador said. Not like this. The Memory Keeper's voice was heavy with something that might have been fear. Humans form bonds with their children that go beyond biology, beyond logic, beyond self-preservation. When you threaten a human child, you do not face one human. You face the entire species, unified in purpose, willing to die, willing to sacrifice everything. They asked the question everyone was thinking, what do you recommend? I recommend we stay far away from this conflict. And when it is over, I recommend we never, ever harm a human child again. The council voted. Not a single species volunteered to help the. On the scholar Lyra presented her research to High Collector one more time. She had studied humans for 20 years. She knew them better than any alive, and she was terrified. You must understand their history, she said, displaying images on a large screen. Humans have fought wars among themselves for thousands of years, but the most destructive, most brutal, most relentless conflicts were always the ones involving children. She showed images of ancient battles, of cities burning, of armies that refused to surrender. When human children are threatened, something changes in the adult humans. Scientists call it a biological response, but it is more than that. It becomes their entire reason for existing. They stop caring about pain. They stop caring about death. They stop caring about anything except saving their children. Waved his hand impatiently. We have the largest fleet in this sector. We have superior technology. We have. You have nothing, Lyra interrupted. Her voice was sharp with frustration. You have ships and weapons. They have something more powerful. They have love. And I promise you, High Collector, love will win. Glared at her, but deep inside doubt was growing. In space, Admiral Ho stood on the bridge of his flagship. He had not slept in 12 days. His officers had begged him to rest. He had refused. His second-in-command, Colonel Ah, approached him carefully. Sir, you need to sleep. You will collapse if you continue like this. Ho looked at her. His eyes were red with exhaustion, but they still burned with determination. My daughters are waiting for me. They are scared and alone in some alien prison. Every minute I sleep is a minute I am not coming for them. Sir, I am their father first, Ho said quietly. I am tired second. When they are safe in my arms, I will sleep for a week. Until then, I will stand. Ah wanted to argue, but she understood. She had no children of her own, but she had seen the faces of parents throughout the fleet. They all looked the same. They all burned with the same fire. They would not stop. They could not stop. On the prison planet, the children were organizing. Had become their leader. She was only 8 years old, but she carried herself like a general. Every day she walked among the children, holding hands, sharing words of comfort, reminding them that help was coming. She had taught them signals, simple hand movements that the guards could not understand. When the rescue came, the children would be ready. They would know where to go, what to do, how to help their rescuers. Ha-Jun stayed close to at all times. He trusted her completely. When he was scared at night, she would tell him stories about brave knights who never gave up. The same stories Sergeant used to read at the orphanage. The knight did not have a sword or armor, whispered one knight. But he had something better. He had the love of his family, and that made him the strongest knight in the kingdom. Ha-Jun smiled. My mama loves me very much. Yes, she does, and that is why she is coming for you. Captain Li Jin's strike team captured a high-ranking officer during a raid. His name was Commander, and he was one of the officials who had planned the harvesting operation. The interrogation did not take long, had seen what humans could do. He had watched the recordings of his comrades falling one by one. He had no desire to be a hero. He told them everything: the location of the children, the defenses around the facility, the number of guards, the layout of the building. When he was finished, Jin stood and looked down at him. Her face showed nothing. "What will you do with me?" asked. His voice was shaking. Jin stepped back. "We will release you." Blinked in surprise. "Release me? But I helped take your children. I thought you would kill me." "We do not kill prisoners who cooperate." Jin's voice was cold as ice. "But you will do something for us. You will go back to your people. You will tell them what you have seen. You will tell them what is coming." She leaned closer and saw something in her eyes that made his blood freeze. "Tell them to be afraid." They released in an escape pod. He flew straight to and he told everyone who would listen. He described the humans he had seen, their speed, their skill, their absolute lack of fear. "They are not an army," he said, his voice still shaking. "They are a force of nature, and they will not stop until every child is back in their arms." High Collector received word that 12 more military installations had fallen. The humans were carving a path through space like a knife through cloth. Nothing could slow them down. Nothing could stop them. He looked out at the stars, and for the first time in his long life, felt true fear. The parents were coming, and they would burn the galaxy to save their children. They had 2 sons. They rose together that morning, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was the last peaceful morning that world would ever know. High Collector stood in his command center, watching the long-range sensors. His adjutant stood beside him, quietly reading the numbers on the screen. The adjutant's hands were shaking. "Report," commanded. The adjutant swallowed hard. "The human fleet has arrived, High Collector. They are at the edge of our system." "How many ships?" The adjutant hesitated. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "We stopped counting at 50,000, sir. They are still coming. More arrive every hour." Stared at the screen. The human fleet filled it completely. Thousands upon thousands of lights, each one a ship, each ship filled with parents who wanted their children back. "They brought everything," the adjutant whispered. "Every ship they have, every shuttle, every transport for children." Finally understood what Scholar Lyra had tried to tell him. To the children were resources, useful materials to be harvested and processed. But to humans, each child was a universe, a whole universe of hopes and dreams and love, that had stolen 2.3 billion universes. And now those universes had come to collect their debt. The fleet numbered 150,000 ships, 3 times the size of the human fleet. They had superior technology, superior weapons, superior everything. They should have won easily. They did not win. The battle began when the first human ship crossed into weapon range. It was a small transport vessel, barely armed, probably a civilian ship that had joined the fleet. They fired on it, expecting an easy kill. The ship did not try to dodge. It did not try to retreat. Instead, it flew directly at the nearest warship, accelerating to maximum speed. The collision destroyed both ships instantly, but the warship was 50 times the size of the transport. The exchange was not equal, and it was only the beginning. Human pilots flew with no fear of death. They took risks that no logical being would take. They sacrificed themselves to protect their fellow ships. They rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed. They fought with a fury that they could not understand and could not match. Admiral Ho commanded from his flagship, watching the battle unfold. His voice was calm as he gave orders, directing ships, coordinating attacks. But his eyes never left the planet below. His daughters were down there somewhere. He would reach them no matter what stood in his way. "Sir, the enemy is concentrating fire on our right flank," Colonel Ah reported. "Send the reserve squadrons, fill the gap." Sir, that will leave us exposed on the— It does not matter. Ho's voice was steel. Nothing matters except reaching that planet. Everything else is acceptable loss. On the surface, Warden watched the sky burn. Ships were falling like stars, trailing fire as they crashed into the atmosphere. He had never seen anything like it. The Dominion was the greatest military power in the sector. They did not lose battles. But they were losing this one. The children watched too. They stood at the windows of their prison, looking up at the falling lights. Many of them were crying, but not from fear. They knew what those lights meant. They came, Hajun whispered. His small voice was filled with wonder. They really came. Held his hand tightly. I told you, parents always come for their children. Dr. Park was on one of the landing ships. She had insisted on joining the ground assault. The military commanders had tried to refuse, but she had shown them the bioweapon she had developed. They needed her. The weapon was a gas that affected only biology. When inhaled, it caused immediate paralysis and intense pain. Not enough to kill, but enough to incapacitate. Had tested it carefully. She wanted them to suffer, but she wanted them to live. I want them to remember, she had said when asked why she chose paralysis over death. I want them to remember this day for the rest of their lives. Death is too quick. Memory is forever. The landing ships broke through the air defenses. Captain Li Jin's strike team was the first on the ground. They hit the facility like a storm, moving through corridors with deadly precision. Sergeant was with them. His weapon was always up, always ready. But he was also counting the doors, counting the rooms, counting down to the moment when he would see the children again. They met resistance. Guards stood their ground and fought. But human soldiers fighting for their children were not like normal soldiers. They moved faster. They hit harder. They refused to fall even when wounded. One guard managed to hit in the shoulder. The pain was terrible, did not stop. He kept moving forward, kept fighting, kept advancing. The guard who shot him stared in disbelief. Any soldier would have fallen. Any logical being would have sought cover. Was not fighting with logic. He was fighting with love. The bioweapon was released through the facility's air system. Within minutes, guards were collapsing everywhere, crying out in pain, unable to move. Jin's team stepped over them without pausing. They found the children in the central holding area. Hundreds of them in one room, thousands more in other sections. When the door opened and human soldiers appeared, a moment of silence passed. Then the children began to scream with joy. They came, they really came. Pushed through the crowd, pulling Hajun behind her. She looked up at the human soldiers with tears streaming down her face. My father, she said. Admiral, is he here? A soldier nodded. He is on his way, little one, he is coming. Hajun looked around frantically. My mama, is my mama here? A voice answered from behind the soldiers. I am here, Hajun. Pushed through the line. She saw her son. He saw her. And then they were running toward each other, and she was on her knees and he was in her arms, and nothing else in the universe mattered. I knew you would come, Hajun whispered into her shoulder. I knew it, Mama. Held him so tightly she was afraid she might hurt him, but she could not let go. She would never let go again. I will always come for you, she said through her tears. Always, my little one. Admiral's shuttle landed outside the facility. He did not wait for the ramp to fully lower. He jumped down and ran, his feet pounding the alien ground, his heart beating faster than it ever had in his life. He entered the building. He passed unconscious guards. He passed celebrating soldiers. He passed crying children being reunited with their parents. He saw none of it. He was looking for only two faces. And then he saw them. And Bora were standing together, holding hands, just as they always did. They looked up and saw him coming. Their faces lit up with a joy so pure that it broke something inside him. Daddy! They ran to him. He fell to his knees and caught them both in his arms. The Supreme Commander of Earth's fleet, the man who had led 50,000 ships across the galaxy, wept like a child as he held his daughters. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I am sorry it took so long." "It is okay," Daddy said. "We knew you were coming, we never doubted." Behind them, Warden lay paralyzed on the floor, watching. He saw the human commander crying, saw the little girls holding him, saw the expression on his face, and finally, understood what the humans had been trying to tell them all along. These were not just soldiers protecting territory. These were not just warriors fighting for power. These were parents, and parents would tear the universe apart for their children. In orbit, the fleet was destroyed. 150,000 ships reduced to debris and silence. The survivors fled in every direction, carrying stories of what they had witnessed, stories that would spread across the galaxy. On the ground, every child was accounted for. Every single one of the 2.3 billion children who had been taken was found and rescued. Not one was left behind. Not one. The parents had come, and they had won. The first transport ship landed on Earth on a bright spring morning. When the doors opened and the children began walking out, the sound that rose from the crowd was unlike anything ever heard before. It was a sound of pure joy, millions of voices crying out in relief and happiness. Parents ran forward, searching desperately for their children. Names were called across the landing field. Families found each other and collapsed into embraces. Grandparents fell to their knees, thanking whatever gods they believed in. The whole world seemed to cry and laugh at the same time. More ships landed, then more. For 3 days the ships kept coming, bringing children home from across the stars. And for 3 days the reunions continued, each one a small miracle. Dr. Park brought Hajun home on the second day. Their small apartment felt like heaven after the sterile alien prison. Hajun walked from room to room, touching his toys, his bed, his stuffed animals. Everything was exactly as he had left it. "Mama," he said that night, holding her hand as she put him to bed, "I was scared sometimes, but I always knew you would find me." Stroked his hair gently. "How did you know?" "Because told me. She said parents always come for their children, and she was right." Leaned down and kissed his forehead. "She was right, my little one. We will always come for you, no matter how far, no matter how long, always." Hajun smiled and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep, safe in his own bed with his mother watching over him. Stayed by his side all night, unable to look away. High Collector was brought before Admiral in chains. The once powerful leader of the harvesting operation was now broken and small. His skin had lost its color. His 4 arms hung limply at his sides. He could not meet eyes. Stood in silence for a long moment, studying the alien who had ordered the kidnapping of his daughters. Many people had expected him to kill. Many would have understood if he did. But that was not the plan. "You will live," finally said. Looked up in surprise. "Live after what I did?" "Yes, you will return to your people. You will travel across the galaxy, and you will tell every species, every empire, every civilization what happened here." Stepped closer, and his voice dropped to a whisper. "You will tell them what happens when anyone touches humanity's children." Was released that same day. He was given a small ship and enough supplies to reach neutral space. He spent the next 10 years traveling from system to system, telling his story to anyone who would listen. He told them about the human fleet that came like a wall of steel and fire. He told them about pilots who sacrificed themselves without hesitation. He told them about soldiers who kept fighting even when wounded. He told them about parents who crossed the galaxy without sleep, without rest, without fear. And he told them the lesson he had learned: never ever harm a human child. Scholar Lyra was invited to address the Galactic Council. She stood before the 12 elder races and presented her research, just as she had once presented it too. But now, everyone listened. Humans are unlike any species we have encountered, she explained. They are physically weak. Their technology is primitive. They have only recently discovered space travel. By every logical measure, they should be insignificant. She paused and looked around the council chamber. But they have something we do not understand. They call it love. It is an emotional bond that connects them to each other, especially to their children. When this bond is threatened, humans become capable of extraordinary things. She displayed the combat recordings from the battle. The council watched in silence. A human fighting for territory can be defeated. A human fighting for resources can be negotiated with. But a human fighting for their child cannot be stopped. They will sacrifice everything, themselves included, to protect their offspring. This is not a weakness. This is their greatest strength. The leader of the council spoke carefully. What do you recommend? Lyra's answer was simple. Never give them a reason to fight. Respect their children as they respect ours, and remember this war for the next 1,000,000 years. The galaxy restructured itself around humanity after the war, not because humans demanded it, but because every species now understood a fundamental truth. Humans might be young, humans might be emotional, humans might be illogical, but when it came to their children, humans were the most dangerous force in the universe. Trade agreements were signed, alliances were formed. Humanity was given a seat on the Galactic Council, something that usually took new species thousands of years to earn. They earned it in 3 weeks. Sargent returned to his orphanage on a quiet evening. He had been away for over a month fighting across the stars. He was tired, he was wounded, but he was home. The children were waiting for him at the gate, all 15 of them. When they saw him walking up the path, they ran to meet him, shouting his name. He knelt down and let them swarm around him, their small arms reaching for hugs. "You came back," one boy shouted. "You promised and you came back." Smiled, and for the first time in weeks he felt at peace. "I made you a promise. The night never gives up, remember." The children laughed and pulled him toward the building. They had so much to tell him, so many stories to share, and he had all the time in the world to listen. Years passed. The scars of the war slowly healed. Children who had been taken grew into adults. They remembered what happened, but they did not let it define them. They lived their lives, raised their own families, and passed down the stories to the next generation. One day, a young alien diplomat visited Earth. Her name was Myra, and she was from a species that had joined the galactic community long after the war. She had studied humans in school, but she had never met one in person. Her guide was an elderly Korean man with kind eyes and silver hair. His name was Ho. He had retired from the military many years ago and now spent his days playing with his. He took Myra to a park in the center of the city. It was filled with children, running and laughing and playing under the warm sun. Their parents watched from benches nearby, always alert, always present. Myra studied the scene with curious eyes. "Your species is interesting," she said carefully. "You do not seem like the warriors from the history files. You seem gentle." Ho smiled. It was a warm smile full of love and memory. "We are gentle," he agreed, "most of the time." "Then how did you defeat the Dominion? They were one of the greatest military powers in the galaxy." Ho watched a small girl run across the grass, chasing a ball. She had dark hair and bright eyes, and she reminded him so much of when she was young. "Do you see those children?" he asked. Myra nodded. "They are the reason we exist. They are the reason we build homes and grow food and explore the stars. Everything we do for them." He turned to look at Myra, and something in his eyes made her feel very small. "They made the mistake of threatening our children. When that happened, we were no longer gentle." Myra thought about this for a long moment. "I think I understand," she finally said. "Your children are your weakness and your strength at the same time." "No," Ho shook his head. "They are only our strength. Loving them is not a weakness. It is the most powerful force in the universe. He looked back at the playground, at the children laughing, at the parents watching with protective eyes. The scene was peaceful, beautiful, ordinary. But Myra now understood what lay beneath that ordinary surface. She understood why the galaxy feared humans, even as it traded with them, allied with them, welcomed them as partners. She understood why, in all the years since the war, no species had ever dared to harm a human child again. The lesson had been learned, and it would never be forgotten. In the end, the galaxy discovered a simple truth. You could conquer human worlds. You could destroy human cities. You could break human bodies. But if you touched their children, you faced something older than civilization, stronger than armies, and more relentless than death itself. You faced the love of a parent, and that love would burn the stars to bring their children home.